It's completely based on National Education Policy 2020 implementation, and also on a few crucial topics like how does national education policy help in personalized learning, at the same time shift from project-based learning to research-oriented project-based learning, including artificial intelligence and financial literacy, improving learning competencies in reading and writing, numeracy, and introducing vernacular language as a medium of instruction. To lead this panel discussion, I would love to invite our moderator for the day, Ms. Dr. Chelmaya Reddy, Principal of Sri Aurobindo International School. I request everybody to please welcome her on the stage. And we have Ms. Anjali Rajdhan, Academic Director, Mulaha International School. Ladies and gentlemen, she is one of our speakers for today's panel discussion. Also, Dr. T. Sudha, Academic Director, Delhi Public School and Pallavi Educational Institute. Can we hear a huge round of applause for Madam? Followed by Ms. Reema Gupta, Director, Digital Blending Learning at Gandhi Institute of Technology and Management, University, Visakhapatnam. Then Dr. T. Lalita Kumari, Principal of Sister Nivedita Schools. And we do have also Ms. Rubina Majid, Founder and CEO of Learning Resource Center. Madam would be joining us in some time. So we'll move ahead with this discussion. And also we have Shri Ashish Naredi, educationist and former executive member, Hyderabad Schools Parents Association. So welcome. And here completes our panel discussion team for the day. So ma'am, if you could start up, so therefore.
Namaste and a very warm welcome to one and all. I would like to thank Mr. Mahesh and the other organizers for inviting me and requesting me to be the moderator with my esteemed colleagues here. The topic for the panel discussion today, this afternoon, is NEP 2020 implementation. So, as I said, I would like to especially welcome my esteemed colleagues as panelists in this session. And of course, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Chelmaya Reddy. I'm the Director Principal of the Sri Aurobindo International School. We have, I think to our history of our school is around only 55 years old. So it's one of the oldest schools in Hyderabad. So I would like to say cover a certain area which in the former panel discussions it had not been covered. And by and large, this part of the NEP, for whatever reason, is not touched upon. So I would like to share two important perspectives laid out by NEP 2020. To start with, it is a known fact that we have been following since over a century the Macaulayan system of education, carrying a legacy which has been alien to us in spirit and thought, implemented with an intention to subvert our own native experience and practice of education and the pride in our culture. Looking around the present educational scenario and its outcome, it is sure that this understanding, this is Macaulay's, what he had in mind. He said that he wanted to undertake the civilizing mission for our country, as he called it, and it verily seems to be quite successful according to his outlook. No doubt we are all products of this very system and are doing quite well in our professional, life. But I think if we go a step a little deeper, upon reflecting on the maladies of our youth and present-day society, it appears that we are living, if I may call it, a kind of confused and divided life of sorts. Putting it in Macaulay's own words, what did he want to do? And this is 2 centuries back, around 1835. He said he wanted to create a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. So this was his very clear cut-out mission. Now, the very first sentence of the vision statement of NEP 2020 seeks to set this right. And I'm quoting, "The National Education Policy 2020 envisions an education system rooted in Indian ethos that contributes directly to transforming India, that is Bharat. It further reiterates that the vision of the policy is to instill among the learners a deep-rooted pride in being Indian, not only in thought, but also in spirit, intellect, and deeds." Well, of course, not to discount that it also speaks about other aspects, about providing highest quality education, which will reflect, a life that we can lead as a global citizen. But the message is very clear, because this is, as I said, the very first few lines of NEP 2020. To revisit and revive our Indian spirit while engaging and expressing it in modern, contemporary forms. So we need to remember and respect this core thrust of the policy while implementing it through varied means. And namely, I will just read out, I think all of you know, but I would still like to read this out, highlighted 10 areas. 1, restructuring school curriculum in a new 5+3+3+4 design. Universalization of ECC, early childhood care and education. Strengthening of foundational literacy and numeracy. 4, reimagining vocational education. 5, equitable and inclusive education. 6, redesigning of curriculum and pedagogy for holistic developments of learners. 7, curricular integration of essential subjects, skills, and capacities. 8, textbooks with local content and flavor. 9, multilingual and power of language learning. And 10, transforming the culture of assessment. Well, I think we have a lot in the plate, and well, that's the whole challenge of how do we really kind of roll out this kind of a curriculum in terms of its, the scope that is trying to cover, it's huge. So for paucity of time, we will be covering only some of these areas this afternoon in the discussion. And before I invite the panelists to share their thoughts, I would like to focus on the other second core emphasis of NEP 2020, which is the holistic approach to education. Clearly, the educational model is developmental, I'm talking of the NEP 2020 now, rather than prescriptive. So there has been a paradigm shift, and the triangle seems to be back on its base instead on its head. So the paradigm shift emphasizes on the integral growth of the human being, namely the physical, emotional, social, and ethical, the intellectual, and not to forget the spiritual. This will surely ensure a healthy and happy society as education takes into cognizance the growth and progress of all aspects of the life of an individual. This morning, Mr. Naveen Mittal also mentioned that, it is so necessary that every individual, through the course of his education, develops himself completely, wholly, as a full personality. That is finally the aim and objective of education. So when we talk of well-being, we need to take into consideration all the aspects, not only the cognitive and the mental and the intellectual, but very importantly, the emotional, as many of you have spoken in the morning, the first panelists, the emotional well-being is of crucial importance. The physical, that is why sports has been given a premium importance in NEP 2020. And again, not to forget the spiritual aspect and the growth of a student and a child. So I would just say that instead of merely focusing on the earning of bread and butter, which is our livelihood, which has been somehow the prime focus of education till date, with the sole intention to earn a plush kind of a job, all guns towards that, I think now NEP is really coming down to saying we need to address the development of the human being in totality, so holistic manner. And that is why they talk about the integration of art and sports, and so many others to make learning in a school a joyous experience. I think that is, again, at the bottom of what they are trying to convey. So now taking this thought forward, I would request Madam Ms. Anjali Razdan to share her thoughts on how NEP 2020 promotes personalized learning. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Very good evening to everybody, from morning to afternoon to evening. Yeah, NEP, I think it's a big hot topic nowadays, and sometimes I feel whether it's an animal or a plant or a human being, but then it's a law and a rule. Before NEP, we had something called CCE, and somehow it was butchered around by not understanding the essence of CCE. Now we have NEP 2020, and thank God it's a law. Thank God it's a rule, and Supreme Court has passed it. So now it won't be butchered, hopefully. All right, so coming back to, ma'am, what you asked, I think, I don't know why it happened so late. The last time national education policy was changed was around in 1974 or 75.
1986, ma'am.
74, 75 was a little before that. I was there, very much alive and kicking at that time.
34 years.
74, 75, there was this 10 plus 2 plus 3 that was evolved.
Yes.
If those who are my contemporaries would possibly know that. And then in around 86, it got slightly changed to let's be a little more contemporary, even though we educationists thought at that time. So NEP was founded. But NEP, besides changing the 10 plus 2 plus 3 structure, it's now changed to 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, all figures. But the basic essence is that it has to eliminate rote learning. Somehow, I'm a very proud Indian, but somehow this is in our DNA, that we are rote learners. Accept it or, just leave it if you think we are not. But that's how our education system functions. And I think it was really, really high time that something like a paradigm shift in our thoughts has to occur first. I was listening to what ma'am was saying, in which we also know that the various points of covered by NEP, which is going to be covered by NEP, of numeracy, literacy, and so on and so forth. But one of the points is very, very important. I think it's covered, but I'm not very sure, is that the soldiers who are going to make the difference, who are they? The teachers. The teacher's mindset has to first change into accepting that this is not rote learning, this is more into holistic learning. And this looks a very small word, HOLIST, Otherwise, it might become HOLE, holistic learning, sucks in everything except academics, So, holistic learning is a huge area, is a huge word, which is accompanied by whatever we are doing nowadays, art education, physical education, health and physical education, the well-being of the child, the spirituality part of it. It's a huge umbrella. But to understand that, I think most of us, we are top-level educators, but then people who are under us, maybe the people who make the difference, the soldiers, I call them, it has to go into their DNA. Only then it's going to work. It has to go into their DNA. So all of you policy makers, please put first it into your DNA and then thrust it on to people who are going to make a difference. Then it will get into the child ultimately. CCE had a fall because it didn't get into the DNA of the system. Otherwise, it was a wonderful system of where, it was productive and it was, cumulative and it was continuous. But the continuous and cumulative assessments, CCE evaluation, they made continuous so terrible that they chopped off the assessment essence of this. They made continuous as real dictionary meaning of continuous. They made, cumulative as a dictionary meaning of cumulative. Rest you can understand, rest is history. But national education policy, some call it as new education policy. Imagine, they don't even know the actual, the name of this whole thing. Now, this is where I mean it has to be addressed to the people who make a difference. And I'm glad we're all here. And it has to sink into our system. in order to sink it into our system, are we believers of the fact that we need holistic education? Our kids are getting robotish. We know it very well. The reason for bringing, changing from the earlier education policy to now is this only, that we realize we are having unemployable children who become ultimately, when they get employed, they're not employable in the real sense. They may know a lot of literacy, but they're not educated. There's a difference between education and literacy. I hope I am, trying to say the ulterior. Literacy, education is umbrella. Literacy is one part of that. So what we were doing up to now is we were making them literates, but not educated. And now this transforms the whole process into education, which is a huge area. Now, for getting that huge area, if the question was that, so how do we do it? A huge process. So let's begin with the people who make the difference, which is our teachers. Personally, I feel until and unless it doesn't get into them, it will not happen. It will just happen the same way as it happened in elsewhere. Distortions will happen in the name of NEP. It's already taking place a little bit. I can see the buzz also. So that's one. And second is the people who make the difference, that is the teachers. From there, it has to go higher up, people like us. For us, it has to be. We have to believe in what we're going to do. If you don't believe in, we're only in seminars like this, I guess then it's going to be, we listen to a seminar, we walk off, we have a nice cup of tea, end of the day. So we have to get in sync in us. So what is exactly the whole process? I'm sure in our course of discussions, my colleagues are going to add a lot. And I am also knowing that in the previous discussion that happened before us, we were all witnessing that, so many things were said, which possibly were overlapping with the national education policies, philosophy. So a lot of matter, words, descriptions, but the deeds is what is to be watched here. So let's change, let's all of us Indians be a little more united in the fact that we want holistic children. We don't want rote learning children. So when these children are going out in the industry, in the corporate sector, they're falling flat. Even if they're the top level achievers in the highest, the JEEs or wherever they crack those entrance exams, they fall flat in real life. Why? There is no soft skills. That is just not there. It's not in the textbooks. So that soft skills integration with academic integration is what I think national education policy is promoting, and its meaning in essence and spirit. I hope I'm clear. Thank you.
Well, as someone just said before the panel discussion that, Anjali ma'am, you kind of, steal the show. So you've said it all right, and it's so very relevant to point out that first the teachers need to be believers. It is the teachers who really need to understand this policy and really make it part of the DNA before we can really, work it out as a curriculum, roll it out as a curriculum in the schools. It is so true. Unless, we kind of become part of the process of change, we cannot expect change to happen in the school. So thank you very much, ma'am, for your, points. Now, coming to the second question that I want to raise to Dr. Lalita, as a continuation of this personalized kind of a learning of NEP, we all also believe and we know, theoretically we know that knowledge is an integral component. But unfortunately, what happens in the school is that we teach, through a kind of snippet approach. We kind of break the subjects over the years and we divide. We have a very divisive kind of an approach towards learning, towards knowledge. And how, according to you, what are your views on the shift to research-oriented project-based learning? Project-based learning is what I would like to know from you, and any other area of your interest. You please share with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am delighted to be amongst the eminent academicians present here. And actually, much importance is not given in national education policy about this research-oriented project-based learning. And project-based learning and research-oriented project-based learning was there since from the ages, because across the globe, from the past 50 years if we take, it was available across the globe. And it has gained momentum only after the national education policy, because the one sentence is added, encourage children to do research-oriented projects. And if we see how the system evolved, and we started with instructional-based learning to teacher-centered learning, and from there to problem solving or problem-based learning, and then project-based learning to research-oriented learning. So when we talk about research-oriented learning, and we are giving a problem to the child from the real world and asking them to do research and find the solutions. So when the child is allowed to do a project by doing a kind of research, then what are the abilities he or she requires? For example, when the child begins with a project, what is that he wants to get out of that project, and why is he or she is doing that project, and how he has to do it, and what are the tools and resources required for doing that project. So these are the things first the child has to understand. And once he understands that, in the exploration of this project, and he will be engaged in learning the content, and he will focus on set of skills that are required to do the project, and then deep understanding of the concept, and he will also learn to ask questions, because why arises from that. So learning the content, anyway, the teacher teaches in the class and he is thorough with the content. Then how he applies that knowledge while he is doing the project is very, very important. Here we need to focus on skill set of the students. The reason is there is a mockery of it. 19th century curriculum is being taught by 20th century teachers to the 21st century kids. So 21st century kids and 21st century skill set is very, very important at present, because the 21st century skills mainly focuses on learning skills, literary skills, and the life skills. And in addition to that, WHO also says 3 R's: reasoning, resilience, and responsibility. So if we help the child to do the project with the set of skills that are necessary, then he will be able to give us the solution for the problem that exists in the society. In addition to these 3 R's, 4 C's are also very important. So 4 C's are part of 21st century skills, because without communication, child will not be able to do anything. Communication, creativity. Creativity is very important to understand where the problem lies, and then the critical thinking component of it. And then collaboration. Collaboration is nothing but working with teams. So unless the child has these abilities, it is very difficult for the child to focus on research-oriented projects. So are we teaching all these skills in our classrooms? That is one question which we have to ask for ourselves, because it is not that you do the project and then we'll get the solution. No. If the child has to do the research-oriented project, he needs to have deep understanding of the subject and focused on skill set, and then he should be in a position to apply the knowledge that he has acquired and then find the solutions to the question. So when we are talking about this research-oriented project, this is tested in Western countries, and as per my understanding, California University and Michigan State University, they have done lots of research on these research-oriented projects. And they have observed that when the children are engaged in such activities, the learning outcomes are 10 to 15 times more than the earlier ones in the classroom teaching. So there what the children are learning teamwork, social skills, and they're focusing on the problem, and then they'll try to give us the solution. So this is how the project-based learning to the research-based learning. So project is nothing but the child is trying to do something, what he has learned from the content, and demonstrating its understanding. And project-based, when we say the research-oriented project, these are all the things that are required. And now I just wish to add on to one point here. If you must have checked the curriculum document 22-23, which is released by CBSE, and in that, even how we have to write the lesson plan is clearly stated. And the lesson plan is aligning with the national education policy. And earlier we just used to write learning objectives, content, and the question answers and the recapitalization. But now it is not like that. And first sentence talks about specific learning outcomes. You are teaching a concept, and what are the specific learning outcomes of that particular concept. And then you have to search for the pedagogical strategies that you are going to apply to teach that concept. And then you will also look for the resources available for teaching the concept. And interdisciplinary approach. So we are all hearing about interdisciplinary or cross-curricular linkages. So the concept that you are teaching in science, how can the child apply that concept in mathematics, in social science, in language? That is also a very, very important component. And then assessments. How are you going to test the learning outcomes of your teaching? So the assessments are very important. And what are the feedback mechanism? And then inclusive practices. So these are all incorporated in the lesson plan writing, which will help if we are strictly following the pattern that is given by the CBSE or any organization. So we will be able to achieve what we wish to achieve from the kids, better learning outcomes. Thereby, definitely, as national education policy talks about, we can make the global citizens with best values, and they can create wonders across the globe. Thank you so much, ma'am. So
thank you, Dr. Lalita, for summarizing so well the question that was raised. Yes, I would just like to add the fact that, yes, I think what is being suggested is that we make students self-learners. That is of very critical importance. It's only when students can become self-learners that research is possible, isn't it? And I think that calls for a very drastic pedagogical transaction, change in the pedagogical kind of practices that we are doing today. And as Ms. Anjali Razdan was just mentioning, that the rote learning part has to go away, and that can happen only when we are able to really instill in the child love to learn and probably learn to learn, you see. So unless there is a whole an energy in the child to want to learn, so the teachers, of course, has to take the onus to stimulate that interest in the child. And I also like the point that you said that the children need to raise questions. Yes. I think without raising questions, there is no learning. And this is something that should be encouraged a lot in every classroom. Thank you, ma'am.
So if we, with true spirit, if we are able to do this research-based learning in the classrooms, definitely there will be a lot of change. They can acquire life skills and then all the skills that are required for the 21st century.
Yes, they come together.
Yes,
they come along
thank
together.
you so much.
So keeping pace with the world is the need of the hour in education. How, according to you, Ms. Reema Gupta, does NEP ensure this in regard to AI and financial literacy?
Okay, so thank you for that question. And before I begin, one of the things that I got asked as I was part of this panel was, hey, you are from Geetham University. How come you are in this school panel? Shouldn't you be in the other room? One of the things is that, no, I'm here by design. It's not an accident. I chose to be part of this panel because as a university, we are consumers of what the school produces. And it's very, very important to have a conversation, not towards the end, right at the beginning. So I'm here by design, and I would recommend Indie Global, the organizers, that in future, please have some forums where the two come together, right? And we discuss ideas. I think very, very important. Let's not do things in isolation. We have done that for enough amount of time. It's time to come together and build a country and our education system that's very strong. So I wanted to put that point across. The second thing that you mentioned, right, it's about 21st century skills. And I come from an engineering background. I actually, in my previous avatar, before getting into education, I used to love tinkering, and now it's called IoT. It used to be called embedded systems design, building small, automated, not robots, but computer systems. it was an amazing experience. And I think to what you said, right, about rote learning and about changing our education system. So one thing that we noticed at Geetham is, like, when we had students, we actually introduced Turnitin. It's a plagiarism software. So all assignments that students submit get passed on through this Turnitin, which automatically checks against all websites, all published resources, and kind of also what your previous students have submitted. So we did this, and guess what? For the first year students, of course, there's a high rate of plagiarism. And I had, as a part of the director of digital learning, my job was to implement this tool. And I had a lot of students coming back and saying, no, ma'am, we have not copied. I don't know if this software is wrong. Why is it flagging us out? You can imagine, I could see WebMD, 100% copy. So I was a little frustrated, and I went to my Pro VC and said, what do we do? How do we handle? And he said, Rima, look, this is not an instant thing. Our education system has taught us to memorize. Now it's just cut and paste thanks to technology. But we have been I remember even growing up, I used to memorize history lessons. We have to. And my daughter, she was in 8th grade. She said, Mom, I have a Python test, coding test tomorrow. Can you test me, ask me these questions? So first thing is, what is Python, right? It's a coding language. So I asked her, what is Python? So she said she had memorized this thing. She said, Python is an interpretive language. I said, okay. And given my engineering background, I knew a little bit more about it. So I said, okay, what is interpretive language, right? That's not in the syllabus. So sadly, these are the kind of learnings we are producing. So I think it's great to be part of this forum, this panel. And I think what you mentioned, that we have to move away from prescriptive to developmental. And I feel as educators, we need to really motivate about the deeper level of understanding, as well as why we are learning, right? So we talk about AI. AI is a great buzzword. Today, it is the talk of the town. When you want to put on your resume, you want to be showed up, at least be seen by companies, AI is something you want to put in. But what do we teach kids about AI, right? And what is our job as educators to teach kids about that? So I think there are two fundamental things that I would like to propose. One thing is that as teachers, now there's a lot of content available, right? We don't need to regurgitate the content. I think we should be motivators of why we should learn this. I think sadly, my daughter, again, being a parent, I'm wearing all different hats of educator, being a parent, and matrices, right? She's learning matrices. Math, 11th grade, matrices, transformation. Doing a lot of homework assignments to learn the transformation. I just asked her, why are you doing this? Do you know where we use it? Does anyone here know where we use it? How many know matrices? Kind of have heard it, right? I think that's the fundamental missing link in our education system. We are teaching the how, the what, but why? We are forgetting the why. Yes. And I think, when we bring in these subjects also, one of my recommendations with policymakers, sadly, it comes up to the teachers, right? I think we should not bring in something if we are not equipped to teach it. Let's not just do it because it's in the policy statement. Let's make sure that we have the resources, we have the capacity, that we are built to teach it. If someone else comes, teaches AI because of matrices, because that's what's in the textbook, it is really not doing a service to the kids, right? And I think that's my other recommendation, that we should only teach things that we feel comfortable, we have the resources, we have a pedagogy for it. The last thing that that is one of the other reasons why I have bombed this panel, meaning joined this panel, and is about, we talked a little bit about research and holistic education. And this is an area that's very, very dear to my heart. I actually have a startup on the side that's built a platform to teach life skills to kids. And this is, again, one of the areas I find it's very, very important. We are teaching a lot of literacy, maybe math and stuff like that, but what does it mean? I think the previous panel talked a little bit about it. what does it mean to be a good human being, right? We talk about our own culture. It's about that mindfulness, being a conscious being. I mean, in the end, it's a global planet. We have only one planet. We need to all work together to sustain it. And I think at least if we can raise that consciousness early on in the child, to say, what does it mean to be a global citizen? What does it mean to take responsibility for our actions? And to collaborate together so that we build a future that we can be proud of and not be robots. I mean, believe me, technology is going at a much faster pace. One of the things we should bring into the curriculum is be aware of how technology helps, but also be aware of the dark side of technology, right? I mean, we see these gaming platforms. If anyone is interested, you should watch. I love watching sci-fi because it tells you a little bit. There's a movie called Ready Player One. It's about a little bit of a futuristic, maybe 20 years down the road, we might be there. It's using AR, VR, and how we can build meta worlds and be in there. And this is where our kids are going to be. We cannot change the pace of technology. Only thing we can do is make them aware. So that's the other thing that we should not just follow it to the rote and the T is what the curriculum says, but really look at the larger picture. Thank you.
So very well said. This reminds me of what once Mr. Aziz Premji had said, that Indians, are the best followers, and they cannot be leaders. You see, there's such a lack of capacity to think. So we are expert copiers across the globe, but when it comes to having to create something, we can't do it because, well, as I think right from the first speaker here has been saying, we are used to copying and the rote learning kind of pattern, and how can we ever think of trying to change and transform education if we are going to continue doing this? And the second part, again, is something I really appreciated what you said, that we need to kind of, ask ourselves why we are learning, and the fact that we really need to bring in, make the children learn the life skills and make them to become more conscious and take responsibility. And one of the ways, and I think, again, this is something which is very much part of our ancient education, where the learning of self was very much part and parcel of learning about the world. So for children in schools, it has to start early, that we have to come up with a certain kind of mentoring, with providing a space where children are able to think about themselves, their thoughts, their feelings, their actions. That alone is going to make them to lead to taking responsibility for themselves. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Unless education provides for self and individualized learning, the student cannot be equipped to become an independent and self-reliant learner. In this regard, there is a great need to improve learning competencies in reading, writing, and numeracy at the primary level. I request Dr. Sudha to share her views.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to each
What
one
could be
of
the
you.
initiatives in these directions?
Oh, yeah. When I was thinking of this topic, I was thinking the management of ours, we started, basically our chairman's vision is that through sports and through activities, we have to reach the hearts of students. And a lot of emphasis we had laid on the sports, and our policy was from each school of the management, that is DPS Nacharam, Mahindra Hills, Nadagul, and all the Pallavi group of educational institutions which are 27-year-old, we wanted to have at least one Olympian from each group. So that was the kind of vision that the chairman had given us. Now coming back to the NEP, I was just recollecting Khalil Gibran's words. I'm not quoting him, but I'm just using his philosophy, where he says that everyone has to be deep-rooted, and then they can spread their wings into the space wherever they want. So this deep rooting is what we always had focused on. I'm speaking on behalf of the management of DPS as well as Pallavi group of educational institutions. When NEP was designed, and NEP 2020 was itself a model which was collaborative. It was industrialists, scientists, and educationists and all others were involved in the framing of this NEP 2020. For the first time I had seen every state and every nook and corner they had called for opinions. Till date also, I find that they are asking for the opinions of people. It's our fortune or misfortune that we are not participating is a different issue. But otherwise, they had opened the forum to each and every one of us. Believe it or not, suddenly, because I had worked at NCRT, I had worked at NUPA, and I had also worked at the helm of affairs where we had to train the diet as well as the leaders and so on and so forth. Therein I had seen that one thing where suddenly overnight NCRT, SCRT, sorry to say, woke up. And believe it or not, suddenly all the e-resources were built up. Overnight, everyone started e-resource making. And in NCRT portals, and CBSE was the first one to take it up. And at the same time, simultaneously, NCRT did not keep it itself aloof. It had made it percolate to SCRT. And SCRT had taken the onus of responsibility, and then it also started simultaneously working. So in NCRT portals, in the e-portal especially, there is something called as Vidya Pravesh. And they had used this Vidya Pravesh to ensure that there is foundational literacy and numeracy. And this foundational literacy and numeracy, just a 3-week course or something like that they had given. And I'm sorry to say, none of the leaders have gone through that portal. And in the e-portal, there is something called as learning gaps. And here, what they have done is learning gaps between the students who are out of school and not going to school, and suddenly when they want to enter into the school system or get some kind of an education. So this also is built in a very beautiful fashion. When I was going through it, I was just wondering how come that, we the educators, so-called, okay? So we people, how come that, we have not used all these resources that are available? These resources are available. Dear friends, if you can go to these portals and explore it, beautifully it is given. So what we have done first and foremost, we had taken up the onus of responsibility to go to OECD. This is Organization for Economic and Social, it is a kind of linkage between the economic as well as the educational fora. And also we have gone to the national curriculum frameworks. And then what we have found is Pratham is one organization in Delhi which had first tested all the slum students who are economically weaker in the basic foundational literacy and numeracy. So what we have done, we are privileged lot, to tell you frankly, we are privileged. So we had, flipped classes, we had, all kinds of, online teaching, learning processes, Google Classrooms, this and that, and what not at what all, because we are in collaboration with Finland, we are in collaboration with Germany, we are in collaboration with Russia, we are in collaboration with everybody. So, but that collaboration is to what extent, So we are learning, and we have been the pioneers. And you might have all read in the newspaper our principal, Mrs. Sunita, getting the National Educational Excellence Award. And a teacher, Best Teacher Award also. Because we all are teachers. Basically, all of us used to teach. Because once you become an administrator, you don't teach. So, you do not know what is the basic that is happening. We already had done action research. and so on and so forth. But all these things leave aside, what we have done is our management insisted. The next day itself, we had started with online classes. But believe you me, dear friends, next day itself, our teachers were getting the training into how to use the technology. And at the same time, we had ensured, because yoga has been our forte, and I'm a spiritual person in that too. So, yoga we introduced simultaneously even before the NCRT has told that, you have to introduce. But when I became the counselor in Manodarpan, I realized all these things, will they work out? We had calls. Manodarpan is another cell. When I was talking to our friends, they said, what is this Manodarpan? This is a social, emotional, and psychological well-being of a human being. Yes. They had selected the principals and some of the people from the society, and however, educational leaders basically, and the psychologists. I'm fortunate enough to be one of the representatives in that council board. And as a Manodarpan counselor, what I have realized is people have so many issues and problems because of the isolation that had happened during the pandemic. And they were raising issues, like in the last panel, they did mention even the teachers, even the leaders, principals, because they were also undergoing, that word is stress, okay? So managements,
Yes.
old, young, alike, everybody. And we had studies done in Tata Institute of Research, that is Rahaba or something, and we had case studies and we were getting educated.
Yes, ma'am.
And this has become our forte when we were attending to our classes and when the children have returned from the pandemic. All the schools under the management of Mr. Kumaraya, what we have done is first done a basic foundational literacy and numeracy assessment.
Okay.
And this we had passed on the information. Continuously we were in contact with the parents. Because unless until the parents concede and cooperate with us, we cannot. Like in the last panel, they were saying they wanted everything online. Test online, this online, everything online. And when we said, and when we told the students that, your spelling is wrong, they used to tell the teachers, ma'am, go to spell test and, spell check mein correction ho jayega. Don't worry.
Yes.
Like she was using the word plagiarism, it has become a norm. Like everybody, anything you ask, everything. And even the assessments were like, parent was sitting and, the children were doing.
No, ma'am, parents also wrote the assessments.
Yeah, parents also wrote the
during
assessment.
online.
Correct. So this was the thing that was happening. So when children came back, we started with this first.
Yes, okay, ma'am.
Yeah. And then, we have understood where we stand. Where we stand, okay? That's the only way that I can say, okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
So I will not put into words, but then, we started. In a very emphatic way, we started a strategy. So every teacher, like, every one of us, including the principals, all of us.
Ma'am, request you to just summarize. They just,
Yeah.
wanted-
We wanted only communication, 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 communication. And we have devised, this is called as effective communication for other language students. We developed a small little module and we started implementing, like, other language, because we are all other language. We are not native speakers, right? So we started with that. And we also started with everything as a game, everything as a coding. For A, you have to jump. For B, you have to do this action. So like that, we started coding and, making the children understand the basics.
Thank you,
And
ma'am.
same way, yes,
Just
ma'am,
wind
just one more minute. The numeracy was, Vedic maths and, abacus. We used abacus and we made children do the abacus, prepare. DIY, do it yourself.
Yeah.
So that, they become self-learners. And assessment, one last thing, ma'am, I have to say. Assessment was not by the teachers, by their parents themselves and by the peers themselves. And, only then the teacher used to cumulatively represent. So now also it is going on like that only. Assessments are not
Yes.
now anymore like that. And students like, little children, they will just go pick up, an apple, say this is one apple, this is two pears. So like that, they have started doing everything from home. Everything is associated
Basic
with
level,
home.
yes, ma'am.
Partnership with parents and community. We involved community, industries, colleges, and universities. We started simultaneously educating our faculty, ourselves also, and till date, we are doing courses and courses and courses, and we have now signed up a kind of understanding between Infosys, which is going to give us a huge platform completely for us, free of cost. No Google payments and other things, okay? So
Thank you,
I'm
ma'am.
sure, this will
Yeah,
certainly
you have
improve.
explained very elaborately about
Thank you.
the initiatives that you have been taking.
Sudha to give us address of
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your elaborate explanation. I would like to request Mr. Ashish Naredi to share your opinions regarding the importance of NEP, that NEP gives multilingualism, and can it really instill pride in India amongst the students?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll try and keep it focused on one single point, that is, the education in vernacular or the education in our mother tongue. And that had become a very controversial subject when NEP was announced. Still continues to arise a lot of controversies. Now, amongst a lot of good things that NEP has done, there are also several loopholes and gaps in NEP. And I think, in my personal opinion, none bigger than education in mother tongue. I make a very strong statement here. The disaster here is of such epic proportions that the entire government and the panel has got the past, present, and future, everything wrong as far as language policy is concerned in the national education policy. Now, why do I say that? Let me just elaborate on that. Why do I say they got the past wrong? Let me give one simple example. Which country do you think was the first country where English literature was taught as a subject? Any guesses from anyone here? India. English literature as a subject being taught in India while the Britishers themselves were learning Greek and Latin. Dr. Chelmai Reddy is here. You can check with her. Sri Aurobindo, he had his entire education in England. He was a great scholar of Latin, and his fame in England was because of his powers of Latin. So much so that I was surprised to know when he came to India and he was talking to his Nanaji in Bengali, he needed help of a translator. I was like, boss, what's happening? So we somehow seem to be oblivious of this fact of, English being imposed upon us. And I won't get into the details of Macaulay and all that he did in the interest of time. But let us come to the more important aspect of the present aspect, and why I say that we've got our present entirely wrong. A lot of time we get this opinion that, "Theek hai boss, past mein hua to hoga," but in now present day age we need English. Without English there is no progress. Without English we can't do anything. A lot of people believe that. I would have taken a show of hands here, but I'm letting that be in the interest of time. But let's revisit this statement and let's try and look at how correct that is. We all might believe it to be true, but is it actually true? Which is a country today which is going, giving you the latest tech and technology and science and development research papers?
Israel.
China, Israel. Yes. Is China studying in English? Is Israel studying in English? Prior to this, which were the countries which were doing it? Japan. Was Japan doing it in English? No. You look at the list of the top 20 countries as per their GDP, only 4 do it in English. How did they get there without English? You look at the list of bottom 20 countries, they're all 18 are in English. So how is English bringing in prosperity? Please look at it. So let's understand it very clearly that English is not required for your progress and prosperity. The world shows it to us very clearly. But let's look at it in the context of India. How about India? Is it required for India? If it's not required for the world, why is it required for India? We know it's not because of that. European Union also has multiple languages, but it is this position because the government is making it so. You might be surprised by that statement. But I am making this statement very consciously and with all facts at my disposal. That is the government which is insulting all our vernacular and native languages at the cost of English, and it's the government which is promoting English. Let me elaborate this with further examples. Let's look at it very simply in terms of three things. What are the educational qualifications or the educational courses you can do in your vernacular languages vis-a-vis English? What are the jobs one can, or the professions that one can get to with vernacular languages, our native languages, and with English? And third, what are the kind of activities we can do in our daily life? So tell me, what's the highest education qualification anybody can get in a Telugu medium or a Tamil medium? Can you become an engineer? Can you become a doctor? Can you get into the army? Can you become a commissioned officer if you don't know English? Do you need English to fight for your nation? Has India survived for 5,000 years without, knowing how to fight for itself? Where is English important? It is the government which is telling, if you know only Telugu, we will demean you, we will insult you. You cannot go beyond intermediate, you cannot go beyond degree, you cannot do engineering, you cannot do medicine. So what is it? Is it not the government which is making this policy? Let's look at the professions or the jobs that we can get into. Can you become a Supreme Court judge without English? Can you become a High Court judge without English? You can become a district judge. Why? Local languages, you be there. English, you should come here. You've got Supreme Court judges proudly stating that, if you don't know proper English, don't come to my court. Is it the court of India or is it the court of some foreign country? Can you become an IAS officer? Can you become an IPS officer? You cannot. What professions do you need? What professions can you get into without English? Why is it so? Because the government is making it so. The government doesn't realize what it's doing. Or perhaps it still realizes, and I don't know which world they're living in. Let's leave the professions aside. Let's look at the basic activities that we do every day. Let's say somebody's given birth to a child. He goes to the hospital. Which language is the medical prescription in? English. Have you ever seen our laborers, our humble people of our nation going there and struggling to find out which medicine the doctor has prescribed? Go to a pharmacist, he'll tell you, take this yellow tablet in the morning, take this red tablet in the evening, and they're all confused. My driver once, he came with a prescription, Saab, dekho doctor kya likha malum nahi. I said, what is there? It was written, come back after a week.
Oh my God.
He's surprised. Modi government got everybody to open bank accounts. I have laborers in my factory. I got salary accounts open for everyone. The moment I got one open, my manager came running to me. Saab, dekho kya hua? Alare, what happened? Why are you afraid? He showed me a message. Saab, bank se kuch aaya hai. Bola, kya aaya hai? The message said, welcome Mr. Ranjit to Bank of India. Look at the position that we are putting the people of our country in. A simple language, a simple bank message is freaking the hell out of that person. So I can't take medicines if I don't know English. I can't read my electricity bill if I don't know English. Your electricity bills are in English. Your telephone bills are in English. Your bank statements are in English. If I can't buy medicine, if I can't pay my electricity bill, I can't pay my water bill, I can't pay my telephone bill, I can't read what my money is there in the bank or how much I've withdrawn in my native language, why the hell should I read my native language? I will read it in English. That is why they're teaching English. But who is making the situation so drastic? It is the government. We have so much of controversy on Hindi imposition. Are you not able to look at how English is being imposed in our country? Only 10% of the people, statistics say, are able to speak English in our country. 90% don't. What is the position and situation of this 90%? Unfortunately, it is this 10% which can speak English who make 100% of all those who make the policies of our country. And which is the biggest drawback for our country. So, if your past you've got it wrong, if your present you've got it wrong this way, where 90% of the people are struggling, how can your future be bright? And because of this English imposition, we are landing in a position where, people are proficient neither in English nor in their own mother tongue.
Yes, that's true.
How will be his mental state? He'll be living with this inferiority for his life that maybe I am not good enough or maybe I'm good for nothing. How will the nation progress if the 90% of the population is living in this position? I'll end my address with that, and that's where I have a problem with our language policy and vernacular policy.
If
Thank
they
you
don't
so
know
much,
English, they
Ashish.
can become the politicians then.
Thank you so much, Ashish, really, for championing the cause of multilingualism.
Yeah,
And I'm
if
completely
I can-
with you.
अगर मेरा ये है कि अगर उसकी राय बनाने के लिए उसके पास भरपूर पर्याप्त इंफॉर्मेशन ही नहीं है, सूचना ही नहीं है, तो उसकी राय लेके आपका फायदा क्या होगा? जैसे चलमई दीदी ने कहा था शुरू में, शी वाज गिविंग एग्जांपल ऑफ मैकाले एंड हाउ ही एनस्लेव्ड द माइंड्स ऑफ इंडियंस. सो आपने बोला अपनी मातृभाषा में कहो. एक छोटी सी पोएम थी जो मैंने लिखी थी, उसको मैं इजाज़त चाहूँगा, खाली 6, 8, 10 लाइन है, जल्दी से उसको सुना
जी,
दूंगा.
हमारे पीछे इन लोग पड़े हैं.
एक ही चीज बता देता हूँ, बिकॉज दिस इज गॉट टू डू आई थिंक विद द सिस्टम ऑफ एजुकेशन एंड द काइंड ऑफ मेंटल स्लेवरी दैट वी गॉटन. देयर एक फैज की बहुत मशहूर नज़म है जिसको कहते हैं, बोल के लब आज़ाद है तेरे, उसमें जुबां अब तक तेरी है. सो आई हैड ट्विस्टेड दिस. आई इमेजिन मैकाले saying this poem in a twisted form to Indians, or the Britishers saying this to Indians. So this is what the Britishers will tell us. बोल के लब आज़ाद है तेरे, उसमें जुबां पर मेरी है, जिस्म दिल दिमाग है तेरा, रूह धड़कन सोच मेरी है.
Wow.
लिखता है तू तेरी कलम से, स्याही उसमें मेरी है, जितनी शिक्षा मिली है तुझको, किताबें सारी मेरी है.
Wow, that's so...
लास्ट लाइन्स, गले का तू जिसे हार समझता, जंजीर गुलामी की मेरी है,
Wow.
शान से पहने तू उसे फिरता, ऐसी अय्यारी मेरी है. थैंक यू.
Wow. Yes, just to add that, I think we all forget that our greatest discoveries of India were made, whether it's even in the field of science. Please remember there were rishis, and they all did it in Sanskrit probably during those centuries back. So they did not need English to be the most brilliant in the world. So thank you for really completing the loop, Ashish, and making us to be aware of total inferiority complexes that we suffer from. So that is why I end by saying that it is about time now that as we celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Utsav, that we don't shy away from revisiting our spiritual heritage, which is in its very essence universal. Our ancient education system, at its greatest, considered the world and self as one, the two ends of the same reality, being part of one consciousness spectrum. Education needs to revive this integration, and NEP is definitely providing the right direction. Not to forget that this year marks the 150th birth anniversary of Rishi Sri Aurobindo, who wrote about national education. The first published book was exactly 100 years back in 1920. And the Prime Minister himself mentioned in his Man Ki Baat on November 29, 2020, how NEP has drawn inspiration from Sri Aurobindo's vision of integral education. So I thank all the panelists to have shared their experience and expertise in various fields, which will be very helpful for all of us to better implement NEP 2020. And I thank Mr. Mahesh and the other organizers and sponsors for inviting us all to this educational festival. It was great learning, but I just have a small complaint that having such eminent kind of speakers, principals with so much of experience, I think next time we should try to consider that we should be given a little more time to be able to listen to their, knowledge and to their experience. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you so much. I must say that it's been a really interesting session. There was so much valid points which all the eminent speakers has put forth. And also, I must say that there's been a really beautiful session, and Mr. Ashish has enhanced more by adding that shairi. So, congratulations, because all the speakers and the moderator have really justified the subject which was given to them. So, I once again thank you all, and now I request our today's one of our speakers in the prior session, Shri PVR Murthy, Chairman of Shri Gayatri, to sir, please come down. So I would request sir to please give away mementos to our respected speakers. So please, may I ask you to come on stage. So we'll start up with our moderator. Sir, if you could give away the memento speaker to Dr. Chelmia Reddy, Principal of Sri Aurobindo International School. Ladies and gentlemen, can we hear a huge round of applause? Please continue that. The next to Ms. Anjani Razdan, Academic Director of Meluha International School. Then to Dr. T. Sudha, Academic Director, Delhi School and Pallavi Educational Institute. Ma'am, please. And to Ms. Rima Gupta, Director, Blended Learning at Geetam University, Visakhapatnam. Thank you so much, ma'am. And to Dr. T. Lalita Kumari, Principal of Sister Nivedita School. Ladies and gentlemen, please, can I hear a huge round of applause for this wonderful personality? Then, of course, Mr. Shri Ashish Nareda, educationist and former executive member of Hyderabad Schools Parent Association. If I could request all our speakers and sir, if you could stand, we can freeze this moment. We can frame out this moment. Thank you so much.